welcome to Gainsborough Studio. A couple of weeks ago I was coming to the studio and this huge HGV forced its way down Gainsborough Road, had an unbelievable difficulty turning right at the end of the junction, and today the Felixstowe Star has found out why. The reason is, apparently, the sat-navs are all programmed wrongly. Where they should be taking trucks, HGVs and all of those to Cricket Hill to feed the dock, it's been wrongly programmed and it's bringing them into Langer Road and into the town itself. Isn't that a wonderful bit of progress in 2013? Hopefully and factually, our guest of today didn't have to rely on sat-nav to get into the studio. He's familiar with it and you're familiar with him. Welcome, Eric.
Hello to you, Mike. May I just say there, when you're talking about the sat-nav, what a wonderful invention it is.
It is for my wife.
It is for me,
right.
because you see, I go back to the days when we used to have maps.
I still do.
Oh, do you?
Yes,
well,
I do.
You should move with the times.
No, I shouldn't.
Yes, you should.
But we won't argue about new technology to own.
But then there was a program where you could actually, on your computer, you could get a journey. So you'd go from Felixstowe to Brighton, or wherever you're going.
Yeah.
And of course that was brilliant until you went off the road and then you lost your way.
Yeah.
But then of course the sat-nav came and you've got that comforting voice telling you where to go, and even if you get lost, it takes you round the right way.
Unless there's a problem.
Well,
like the road is closed, and then they keep taking you back there.
No,
but let us not argue about sat-navs.
I'm a great. I think you youngsters are so lucky with all the technology.
I mean, what you've just said, in the days when both the AA and the RAC were mutually owned, you could get routes from them, from anywhere to anywhere within Europe, and they provided me with some fascinating routes into Scandinavia and Germany, and so it's nothing new, Eric. It's just presentation.
But it's so
world in
nice
its way.
In your ear, telling you where to go.
You find that comforting?
Oh, I do.
She gets up my
nose. I keep it on all the time, even if I'm doing a journey I've done before.
I know. Now, Bella, you don't need it because you've got one in there, haven't you, that tells you where you should be going, and that's fantastic. We are today on stage 3, I think it is, isn't it?
I think it is the third
of
one, yes.
Eric, This Is Your Life.
Absolutely.
Now, on the last occasion, we had a reprise of what life was like, the hell of the coal fires, the frost within the window panes of the bedroom. And we did a whole bit, and if you'd like to have a look at that, it is on the website and you can pick it up, and perhaps we'll cluster them all together at some stage.
Just coming back to that,
yes.
One thing we forgot to mention, and people have forgotten it completely, is all men used to have a separate collar to their shirts.
Oh, a collar stud.
No, not just a collar stud. You have a white collar which was separate to the shirt, so the collar came off. And people don't realise why that was. Because you put a clean white collar on, and literally within 3 or 4 hours, it would have a black rim round the edge.
Yes.
And so that, unless you had a clean white collar to change it, you were in the suit. People don't realise the pollution that was in the air in those days from all the coal fires and all the chimneys belching forth smoke. We were a coal economy.
I suppose really I was very fortunate because I lived in the delightful South Devon, and we didn't have bleaching chimneys. So I mean, yes, people used to wear collars for smartness because of whatever, and you had a collar studded back in front, didn't you?
That's right.
And I had them in the Air Force on first joining.
Yes, that's right.
So I accept that, but I mean, England is a disparate sceptred isle, isn't it? And some of us were lucky to live in places where we weren't, polluted but you weren't.
But
and
London,
what age are you now?
London.
What age are you now?
I'm 87.
So obviously it did you a lot of harm.
Oh no, it didn't do me any harm
Exactly.
at all. It built up my immunities.
Yeah, I think it may have done.
And you see, this is one of the problems today. People are so careful, they don't build up their natural immunities, and what's the consequence? They're ill, they're having to take medicines.
To every sort of thing that's coming along.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Yes.
Can we get back to you? The last time we talked, you'd thought about entering the priesthood.
Yes, well, I not only thought about it,
You went off to the
I
seminar.
actually went to the seminary, and it was a junior seminary, and I was there for 3 years, I think, or 3.5 years, I can't remember. And of course that was an experience. I'm sure I was brainwashed,
Yes.
But the whole point is that it was worse than living in a monastery.
Yes, you
Because
said.
we were silent all the time. We had reading at meals. We were only allowed to talk at supper time. That was the only time we were allowed to talk.
So what age were you then?
I think I went there, it must have been at the age of about 15 or 16.
Right, so you spent a couple of years?
Two or 3 years there.
So the
But-
call-up.
Well, then the call-up came, and because I was, how should I say, I wanted to go in the Air Force.
Yes.
I wanted to go in the air, in actual fact.
Did you? Yes.
And I might add at this point that I had the ambition to fly then.
Yes.
But I'm pleased to say that
You've realised it.
I, at the age of 80,
Yes.
I took up flying.
Good man.
And I got my private pilot's license at the age of 83.
Well, I think
which
that's
I don't
brilliant.
think that's bad.
But
So-
I think what
so-
it does show is that Ryanair is approachable by all ages to keep its airline in the air.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
did you get the job with Ryanair?
I'm waiting for a reply.
Excellent.
No, but
Okay.
coming back
Yes.
to what we were talking about. What were we
We're talking about your process of getting into
Oh,
a
yes.
service that you would prefer
Yes. So-
at conscription
So
time.
basically, at the age of 17 and a half,
Right.
this was in the September, I think it was,
Right.
I went back to the seminary, and then we agreed with the rector that I should go back and live at home in London and join the, I don't remember what it was, whether it was Air Cadets or the
Oh, yes, sir,
equivalent,
yeah. Mhm.
and so that we got some, I got some
Background.
background to be able to get into what I wanted to get into when I joined up at
right.
18.
Right.
So I was very interested in that because it gave me a flavour of what living in London was like as a sort of a teenager.
Yes, of
now
course.
to support myself, because obviously my parents were poor, didn't have any money, and so I had to go out to work to
Was
support
he still
myself.
getting music students, etc.?
Yes, he
was.
was.
During as the war was
As
sort
the
of
war, but
raging
of course-
about it.
but of course, needless to
Amazing.
say, not many,
No,
because
no.
it was
Hard times anyway.
hard times. But he was a professor of music and had his college of music. But it was a difficult period.
Right.
So I went as a filing clerk
Did you?
at County Hall for the 3 or 4 months.
What, the one on the Thames?
One on the
That
Thames,
is now
yes.
a hotel.
Now a hotel, I
Ah,
remember
right.
it. And I used to go down from upstairs at the top floor, right down to the basement, which was full of files. I wonder whatever happened to them. Millions and millions of files.
They'll be in an archive somewhere.
Yes, and of course I had the experience there. I joined a youth club,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up practically running it, I might add. And I
I
think,
am surprised, Eric.
oh, you're surprised at that. But anyway, to cut a long story short, it was a very important point because, as I think I mentioned last time, I got very interested in magic
That's what I was, yes.
and what have you. And in that 3 or 4 months, I met a retired magician.
All right.
And he was a wonderful old boy, but he taught me so much. He took me over,
Brilliant.
and he turned. I'd been doing it for many years up to then. When I say many years, probably 10 years. I'd been playing with magic.
And you still had the conductor's baton.
And I still had that conductor's baton.
Good.
That's right, for
Good.
my first time. But it was a wonderful experience.
Right.
What I learnt from him, and so. But then I was called up, and of course I went into the Air Force.
Right.
Went up and did our square bashing.
Lovely. Did you enjoy your square bashing, Eric?
Well, it was an experience.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was an
I
experience.
think we could all say
But,
yes.
It had a taste. You see, life went on, even though there was a war going
Oh, yes.
on, and people don't realise cinemas weren't as they are today. They were sort of one of the main attractions. There'd be queues round the blocks.
No television.
No television, so people went to the cinema. And of course there was the variety theatres,
Yes.
and they even went on throughout the war.
Yes.
And so I can remember being up in the north doing my square bashing, going off to the variety theatre in the evening to see the...
Were you able to use your magic show to? I mean, were you able to get the drill instructor to ease off by amusing him with some
No.
disappearing? Could you make him disappear?
I tried hard.
Because
but it
that, I
didn't
mean, there was one that we had. I'd have loved to have seen him
Would you
disappear.
have?
He was.
Because you were...
I was in the Air Force.
You were in the Air Force, so you did your square bashing as well.
And mine went on for sort of 18 months
Oh,
because
did
I
it?
did
Oh, I
boys
see.
service. And it
Oh, I
was,
see.
And, yes, if it was a stone, it had to be painted white. And it was I mean, my conflict was it was a highly technical service I was training to be.
I see.
But you had the madness of the mindless discipline.
Yes.
And that's a, you know, it's a conflict, isn't it? And
Yes,
it is today, actually.
That's right.
But continue with your experience.
What became even more interesting was then, of course, because I was in the Met Office, I joined the Met Office. You do your square bashing,
Yes.
so you do it. Then they sent me down to London, and I stayed in one of the London hotels to
Right.
do my training for the Met Office.
And so you should.
So you should, absolutely, no
Absolutely,
question
yeah.
about it.
Why or how did you end up pulling a jammy posting such as a Met Office? What were your particular attributes
Well,
that
you
they
see-
decided you would fit, or were they just
Oh,
desperate for
no,
people?
No. The reason for it was very simple.
Mathematics?
No, you see, I had, because I went to the seminary,
Yes, yeah.
I'd got my matriculation, the London matriculation.
Ah,
Now,
right.
people don't realise the value of the London
Oh, it was,
matric,
yes.
because I think I may have mentioned it before, but we had to take 5 subjects,
And pass
and you
them all
had
in one.
you had a day on each subject in the week, exam, a whole day exam on it, and if you failed one subject, you failed the lot.
Yeah.
So you had to be a very high standard.
Yeah.
But of course, the Met Office, which
What-
needed they wanted people who were pretty literate, if you know what I mean,
Yes,
well
yes.
versed with what was going on with the brain and what's it.
Right.
And of course, because I had the London matric, I was able to get into the Met Office.
So it was really the bar was set by the Met Office.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
therefore, if they didn't meet that, then they'd reject the recruits.
Well, there was no use because
No
what's
point,
the use
no
of having somebody in the Met Office who couldn't? Wasn't
Only
able
I
to
was
cope with it?
based. One of my first postings was RAF St Morgan.
Oh, was it?
And we
Yeah.
were a master div station, so
Yeah.
we had continuous 24-hour Met
Yes,
office.
yes.
So we used to go out with the balloon boys and do
Yeah.
whatever. And
Oh, so
the
interesting.
forecasting was very fascinating.
Yes.
So it was. But I'm just thinking of one of the Met boys. I mean, he was as very keen to get the value of both West Country beer and cider, and I'm surprised that his brain coped eventually.
Well, he
but that's
tried.
another story.
Yes.
Onwards.
But at any rate, so I did the training with the Met Office in London.
Yes.
Once again, a very happy experience because I was able to see, and the crowds in the West End,
Oh.
absolutely unbelievable. Everyone who was on leave would swarm into the West
Yes, of
End,
course they were.
full of prostitutes, girls,
Yeah.
Air Force Americans, and packed solid the West End was.
I bet.
And it was
For
was a
tomorrow you
hive.
die.
For tomorrow you die.
And I think we forget that part.
I
of the war.
remember walking through to the
Because this now
hotel.
would have been what, 44?
Yes,
Yeah.
44. I
So
can
we're in the
remember-
last year of the
Yeah,
war.
I can remember walking through the Leicester Square,
Oh.
and just as I was walking along, this girl rushed up, put her arms round me, kissed me, and ran off again. That was the sort of atmosphere that was
Yeah.
going on in London in those war years.
So you've
I mean, it
always
was-
had this magnetic appeal for ladies.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, they just
Yes,
keep
the-
throwing themselves
It's
straight
the
in
other
there.
way round. They attract me, of course. This is the problem. But anyway, to come back.
So which hotel do you remember?
I can't remember
No,
which one.
but it was near to the Met Office.
Well, the Met Office, we didn't go to the Met Office.
Oh, right.
We had a lecture room somewhere. I
Ah,
can't
right.
remember.
I'm with
but
you.
It's,
Yeah.
But so I qualified with the Met Office, and then I was posted to a Pathfinder station. Now, people don't realise what a Pathfinder
Which one was
station
that?
did. It's one near Sandy in Bedfordshire.
Oh yes.
And
yes.
the Pathfinders, they were mainly the Lancaster, which were the bombers, and they
Mm.
had the mosquitoes. So what they used to do, we'd give them a forecast. They say they were going to bomb Berlin or bomb a city.
Yes.
The Pathfinders would go out first of all
Mm.
and sort of check the route, check the opposition, check what was firing at them, whether fighters came out at them,
Right.
and then they would come back. That report would then go to all the bomber stations throughout
Right.
England, and then they would send them out and have a proper bombing raid. In
Right.
other words, they were the people who went out and explored. But just to give you an instance of
Can
the
I
difference,
just get some clarification
you're
from you?
you're
No, go on.
stopping my train of thought. I hate
Right,
to tell
yes.
you, when you get older,
But-
you're
Go
a
on.
youngster. The difference in regulations and things, because I can remember being taken up in a Lancaster bomber
Mm.
and doing a trip with the gunner. In the Lancaster bomber's got a sort of a glass dome
Yeah.
in the front,
Yeah.
and sitting with the bomb aimer and the front gunner
Mm.
with him, and he was telling me we've just had a new bomb Aimer introduced. He said,
right.
it's a wonderful thing, you set it and it put the bomb within yards. He said, but I still prefer just lining up the target with my toe and then pressing the button.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure they did.
And of
I'm
course
sure.
the rear gunners,
Oh, yes.
they had a
Tail
very
end
short,
Charlie.
yes, they had a very short life. And on the station you were always having these people dying and not coming back. It was very sad. And then they used to have an auction of their possessions. So,
Really?
so when the man didn't come back, his motorcycle and his bits and pieces would all be auctioned,
next of kin.
and the next of kin would get the...
There was just a bit of clarity I wanted there.
Yes, no, carry on.
I have a friend whose brother was lost. He was a Pathfinder pilot. And it was the marking of the target that apparently he was lost doing.
Oh yes, it was a very
so,
dangerous,
at the end of it,
thing.
so one would assume if you marked the target, they knew you were coming, because that's what you've marked it.
Yes.
And that in itself must have, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? If they know you're coming, then if it could have been many of hundreds. So.
No, well,
but
see,
a high risk.
It wasn't quite like that, if I can correct you.
Well, that's what I wanted clarity
yes,
on.
no,
Really.
well, you see, what the thing was, they went, say for instance they were going to decide they were going to attack a particular airfield, they would send the pathfinders out.
Right.
If it was highly defended, if there was a lot of anti-aircraft fire, if there was a lot of fighter squadrons round and about, then they'd
divert
the target and change the target. So this is why there was a very high death rate with the pathfinders, because they were in effect going to check whether it was highly dangerous or not. I think that's a fair way of putting it. It's probably oversimplification.
And those particular, because they used Hurricanes, I think, high-speed Hurricanes.
No, they used the Mosquitoes, I think.
Did they?
And they had the, they might have had Hurricanes, I can't remember. I wasn't in, you see, discipline was far less in those days, and I can remember I used to jog a lot, jogging on the airfield and the Lancasters coming in to land while I was jogging around. And it's just amusing. I had a very great interest in Irish wolfhounds. I've had Irish wolfhounds throughout my life.
Right.
And it was while I was on the Pathfinder stations I started this, because people were allowed to have a dog on this station. You had to get permission from the CO.
Really?
Just have a thing and say, can I please have my dog on the station? And they you get official permission and what have you. So you don't have to give the type of dog. So I said, I'd seen an advert for Irish wolfhounds. And so I dropped a note to the CO saying, please may I have my dog on the station, and he gave me official permission to keep one dog on the station. So I went straight away down to these people who had this Irish wolfhounds for sale, and of course nobody would buy them. So this poor woman, she had a house, a large house, and she must have had a dozen large Irish wolfhounds running round the house. You had to stand back into a doorway to let this herd of Irish wolfhounds go by. And I always remember, I think she wanted £5 for this Irish wolfhound.
Oh, right.
I said, well, I can't afford £5.
No.
She said, well, you can pay me at 10 shillings a week.
Did she
So I paid her, no, not 10 shillings a month.
Oh, right.
And so at any rate, so I had this huge Irish wolfhound, as you know, it's the largest breed of dog
they're
there are.
Yeah.
And one day I walked it through, had it around the camp. It used to sleep with me under my bunk, and my bed. And I was walking down with this huge animal, and the CO pulled up beside me. Who gave you permission to have that?
You did.
You did, sir.
I love it.
So it was
I must admit, I could not envisage that at St Morgan. I mean, the products of unions could have been very interesting.
Yes, no, but you see, the thing was, this was wartime.
Oh, absolutely.
And in the war, a lot of different things went and what have you. To cut a long story short, the war hadn't gone, but I was posted overseas to, they were wanted people in the Far East because of the Far East War.
Yes.
And so I remember going, I was posted, and I went aboard the vessel, and we were the first people to go through the Suez Canal, because the Suez Canal had been closed, and it was only because the war in Europe was easing up.
Right.
And so they opened up the Suez Canal, and we were, I think, the first vessel to go through.
Really?
And what is the port at the beginning?
Port Side.
Port Side.
Yes.
I saw the water down. We went in and moored there.
Yes.
I thought I'd go for a swim.
Oh,
so
right.
I went down the gangway and had a swim.
Yes.
And of course I was called back on board and hauled over the coals for
Oh,
it.
were you really?
But the whole thing was, on the journey,
Mm.
I had separate quarters completely because I entertained the troops every night. We had a
Would
a-
you
a
like to
show.
put some definition to that?
Well, no,
Yeah.
with magic, with magic.
Sounded a bit.
And
I mean, even for FTV,
I had,
that was getting.
I had a bit, but you see, before the Suez Canal, the ships going to the Far
All
East
around
used to
the
go
Cape.
all the way around the Cape,
Yeah.
bottom of Africa, and up
Weeks,
the other way.
extra
Tremendous
time.
thing. So anyway, we got to Calcutta, where we disembarked,
Did you?
and they put us straight off the vessel onto a train and set off from Calcutta to Bombay. But in other words, across the whole of India.
Oh, right.
Without
Yes, I'm
a
with you.
pause.
Yes.
And this went on for a long time, this train journey. And the poverty in India then and now
Is
was
appalling.
so appalling, it's
Yeah.
hardly true. I
So how
mean,
did they feed you on the train?
I can't remember.
You don't
Even
remember it, so it
remember
had no
that.
impact on you.
No.
It did on me. I had jippy tummy for
Did
quite
you
some
really?
time.
Yes,
Mm.
yes.
But
But
go
at
on.
any rate, we got to Calcutta and they said, now you're going to go straight onto a ship and go over to Rangoon in Burma.
Oh, right.
And I said, well, I've been travelling for what?
Con-
I said, I'm going to go and have a sleep. So I went to my bunk and had a sleep. And of course, when I woke up, I found that everything had gone.
Oh,
But
lovely.
it was a huge transit camp.
Yeah.
And of course, I discovered that the only way they keep check on all these thousands and thousands of troops who were passing through it was when they went to get their money.
Yes.
We were
Payday.
Payday.
Yes.
That's the only way they could
Thursday.
keep check on it. So I thought, well, if I don't go and get my money, I can legally stay in
Forever.
this transit camp. So I settled myself down. I made a very nice every Friday I'd hold a little raffle,
Yes.
and that raffle brought me in enough money to go.
Carry on.
You see, all the new people coming in,
Yeah.
they are very happy to take part in a raffle.
Yeah. Transit camps are strange places.
Yes. But it was while I was there that the peace was declared.
Oh, right.
I think the end of the war in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And I can always remember I went into Bombay, into the town, and the local restaurant gave all the troops free egg and chips
Oh.
to celebrate the
Is it-
winning.
That
of
would
the-
have really been good, wouldn't it?
But anyway, then I thought, well, I ought to end this little holiday.
Sir, I'm here.
No, I just went and asked for my money, and of course,
Oh, right.
then the next day I got a posting to Rangoon,
Oh, right.
and they didn't care. It
So
was,
when you left UK, your final destination you didn't know. You were just
Well,
going,
just going
going
forward,
off and,
yeah, no,
and
that's right, yes.
you'll end up somewhere.
But so they gave me this
Right.
posting to Rangoon, so I landed in Rangoon,
Mm-hmm.
and we were posted to an airfield called Gamayo,
Oh, right.
and it was an interesting posting.
So you were still in the Met?
Pardon?
So you were still in the Met?
I was still in the Met
Yeah,
Office.
right,
Oh, yes, indeed.
right.
And there, it was amazing.
Mm.
I mean, people don't realise in those days, before they had all the facilities on, the insects. I mean,
Oh.
I can remember going into the Met Office in the evening, spraying, because we had the stuff to spray
Oh,
it,
the
spraying
DD.
all the insects,
Yes.
and literally it was like a carpet of dead insects on the floor. We had to sweep them up. And of course we all got this prickly heat,
Yes.
and
Oh,
it
nice.
was, the heat was absolutely unbelievable to us poor English people.
And no air conditioning, I take it.
No air conditioning.
Just
no
the
air-
fans turning.
Yes, well, we didn't even have fans.
Did you
turning.
not?
No.
Dear
You're talking
me.
about wartime.
Yeah, well, I'm
you
just
know.
thinking, the old Wonka boys.
But then, of course, I was attached to the Americans
Right.
who were doing upper air research.
Oh, right.
And what we did, we had huge helium balloons, which we filled from tanks. They had a transmitter on them,
Mm-hmm.
and as it went up, they'd go up to, I can't remember the height, 10 or 15,000 feet, and it would be transmitting down. We'd pick up the signal on a receiver
Yeah.
in the I don't know what you'd call it, the reception
Well, you'd have had a
area.
calm sort of receiver
And
section.
it was a huge receiver,
Yeah.
and so then we plotted all the temperatures and wind speeds and everything, all the different conditions all the way up.
Pressures, yes.
I've got a
Right.
sneaking suspicion that this was preparation for the atomic bomb which they were about to drop.
Oh, right.
But I didn't know that at the
No.
time, and the Americans didn't know that either.
No.
But it was a fascinating period, and of course, I got to know the Burmese very well, and I, in actual fact, I had a little separate house. I lived off the camp, and I had a separate house where I lived, and
just correct my vision of the Japanese had actually partially invaded Burma, but they didn't totally subject it.
Yes, now
so we were holding a line.
Very interesting. When we went in, of course, the Burmese had a few years under the Japanese.
They had, yes.
And of course, being previously British, it's always lovely to have the British back. But of course, I learnt Burmese, and I got them talking to me, and they said, we much preferred it under the Japanese.
Right.
And I said, why is that? They said, well, under the British, there's no law and order. If you left a jeep outside in Rangoon, you could come out half an hour later and find all the wheels gone, the engine gone, and all of it. Oh, it was, crime was right. At night time, you would hear gunfire, you know, where people were being robbed, houses were being raided.
Really?
Oh, the crime was horrendous. And of course, I said to them as well, why is it that, well, how did the Japanese stop all of that?
Shoot them.
They said they had a very simple way of doing it. They said if they caught someone stealing, they'd cut off their heads, stick it on a post, and put it at the entrance to the village. And the result was, they said, that you could sleep at night, you could leave your doors open, there was no robbery, no stealing,
So they wanted summary justice today?
Well, so basically, what people don't realise, and it still applies today, there are different cultures.
Indeed.
And one culture needs strong discipline. This is why sometimes by our culture, we don't like the strong dictatorships and what they're doing, but we don't realise that culture needs it.
Yes.
Do you follow what I mean?
Yes.
And this is where sometimes common sense goes out of the window. But
yes, it needs to be suitable for the culture and whatever. So we're still in Burma.
We're still in Burma.
We haven't got you back to UK yet.
Not yet.
Okay, well, tell us more of Burma, because we've got a few minutes to finish up with.
Yes.
And then we'll move on for the return. You came back by ship, I take it?
No, there's a whole story with that as well.
Let's crack on with Burma.
But with Burma, but basically the Burmese are wonderful people.
Indeed, I've known some.
And absolutely enchanting. In fact, for our 60th wedding anniversary, because I've been married to my good lady now for 64 years.
Well, we haven't got you married yet.
No, well, that'll come. But for our 60th wedding anniversary, I wanted her to see Burma.
Oh, lovely.
And so what we did a world tour to celebrate the wedding anniversary.
Right.
When we got to Australia, I'd got a visa to go into Burma before we...
Oh, right. And this was a military regime period?
No, this was recently, my 60th wedding anniversary. So I wanted my wife to see Burma.
Yes, right.
So when we in Australia, fortunately, one of my sons in Australia, he knew a travel agent, and she said, if you're going to Burma, she said, it's very difficult to get in first place.
Exactly.
But she said, if you go to Burma, only take American dollars.
Yes.
And take cigarettes and whiskey.
Yes.
And so I did that.
I use that in Norway, so it's universal.
But so when we got to, I forget where we were, Bangkok I think it was, then we got a plane to Burma, and I was amazed to find that things in Burma was exactly the same as it was when I was there.
You're kidding.
There was no difference. I was able to get a air-conditioned van with a permanent guide and 3 guards.
You needed that.
And for all full time while we were there.
Yes.
And that cost me £50 a day.
Wow.
Equivalent to 50 so But the whole thing was the military was so strong it was hardly true. We were driving along a road one day and they said, glance over to the right there, and that's where that good lady was doing. They said, if they see you looking, they will shoot you. So I'm just showing you how the regime
I think
was.
she's a remarkable lady.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But anyway, I think time
it's getting
time
there.
has caught up.
It is getting there, Eric. But I think we need to your thoughts of your military service in Burma.
Yes.
Did you do any good for them at all?
Did I do any good for them? Yes, I did try. I tried. As I say, what I tried to do, and I was very lucky in that way, because I was able to, as I say, establish a little ménage
Yeah.
house in a place called Gamayo, I think it was.
Right.
I can't remember.
I mean,
the
it
place.
strikes me that you were very much a free spirit.
I was
within the system.
And I learned.
And you learned how to play the system.
I learned Burmese.
Oh yes, very keen.
And one of the biggest things, biggest joys was, of course, in those days they had what they called ponjis.
Right.
And the ponjis were the Burmese monks.
Oh,
And they were allowed, I think, it's 2 possessions or 3 possessions. Their yellow robe, their wooden sandals,
Right.
and a stick, I think. But they had 3 possessions. That's all
Right.
they were allowed. They had to be fed every day. They could go anywhere and be given food and what
Right.
have you. And
That is an interesting culture.
I used to have these ponjis every day. When I was in my little
Yes.
bungalow, they'd come and visit me, have breakfast with me,
Oh,
and I
fascinating.
learned so much from them.
You would.
And-
So what? Eric, we must close.
Yes.
The viewers got to get off and do some fishing
Absolutely.
and have a wonderful day.
Good,
But
thank you.
lovely to see that. And we will resume This Is Your Life. I mean, eat
If-
your
if you
heart
can
out,
put-
aim
if
in
you can
hand,
put
Drews.
up
It would
with
go
it.
on forever.
If you
No, I
can
can
put
put
up
it
with
up.
it.
I mean, it's what the poor old viewer does. But we'll see.
Yeah,
So
take
the
care.
next time we will continue.
Good.
Thank you
Take
very
care.
much, and we will see you in Eric's unbelievable life story, which is in certainly phase session 4 soon. Bye bye.